Hey guys, back to another video. Review impressions on Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Yeah, probably a bit of a surprise. Crack Lotus here on YouTube actually hooked me up with a code for the PS3 version of this game, and again, I got to thank him a lot for that. And this is a game I've actually been wanting to play for a long time, and for whatever reason, I just never got around to it. Even though I haven't played Far Cry 3, but Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon always looked really interesting to me. And yeah, I decided to play it, and yeah, it's very enjoyable. A really enjoyable game. It's been a long time since I've played a first-person shooter. I haven't. The last time I played a first-person shooter was like Wolfenstein. That's like nearing like 2 years ago. I'm not a huge fan of the genre, really. And actually, some of my issues with this game have to do with it being a first-person shooter. But let's just jump right in with the story. Now, this is an expansion developed by Ubisoft Montreal, an expansion to Far Cry 3, a standalone expansion. You don't need Far Cry 3 to play this. It takes place in the year 2007. Where like a nuclear war has happened and the world is just like devastated by this. For some strange reason, the U.S. nuked Canada. It said that in one of the dialogue sequences, which I thought was kind of funny. It's a Canadian developed game, so I don't know. I thought that was kind of weird and funny, but this is basically just a throwback to the 80s, this game. The story, you play a cyber soldier named Rex, and you're trying to kind of stop this rogue, this elite agent that's gone rogue by the name of Sloan. And I don't really want to say more than that, because it'd spoil a lot of what makes like the plot special. It's really goofy. It doesn't take itself seriously. The dialogue is really like ham-fisted, tons of one-liners. It's just 80s cliches all over the place with the plot in this game. And the cutscenes in this game aren't your typical cutscenes. They're done in the style of like the old Ninja Gaiden games on the NES. And that was actually like a major breakthrough as far as like storytelling goes in video games. Those cutscenes in the old Ninja Gaiden games, where you have like dialogue and then little like pictures of like the events kind of unfolding. So I thought that was a nice throwback to the 80s as well. And yeah, the story is really over the top. You know, I don't want to spoil too much, because if you're a fan of the 80s, you'll love it. You'll love everything this game's doing with regards to the story. And it's honestly one of the highlights of the game. I think the story is actually stronger in the second half too. It's very humorous too. It's very tongue-in-cheek. I laughed quite a few times playing the game. But it's one of those things where if you're not into 80s action movies and things like that, you'll probably lose out on a lot of like the jokes and things like that. You'll probably actually not like it all that much. But yeah, the story is really hilarious. Like, no, it's not amazing or anything like that, because it's, you know, done in the style of you know, those old like 80s action movies. But it's really entertaining. It's really well done. Gameplay wise, it's very similar to Fallout 3 from what I understand. You have this massive island, and there's like different outposts and things like that you can capture. The general gameplay is like, you've got like your main story missions. There's not too many of them, and the game's actually rather short. It should only take you like, I don't know how long it took me. I want to say like 5 hours to get through the main plot. But other than that, there's some side missions. Not a crazy amount of variety with the side missions. You've got like a bunch of different side missions where you have to like rescue scientists at different outposts. And those are actually a little annoying, because if the scientist dies, you fail the mission. That's kind of irritating. But the other side missions are kind of funny, where you have to like kill wildlife. And they're just as an example, one mission has you going into the sewers and you're killing turtles, and then you find like boxes of pizza in the sewers. It's really like that. Like, that's the kind of humor you'll expect with the game. So those side missions I thought were really funny and interesting. But you've got the outposts. When you capture an outpost, it's counted as yours, and you can kind of fast travel between outposts. You've got vehicles to drive around in. You've got a bunch of different weapons, all really kind of futuristic weapons. The weapon selection is good. I was expecting it to be a little more creative. You've got your assault rifle, you've got your sniper rifle, you've got your pistol. I mean, it's your general first-person shooter weapon selection, but I like the weapon designs. And there is actually a really cool weapon you get later in the game that I don't really want to spoil. There's melee attacks. You can do melee attacks. If you There's like a big part of this game is stealth, and same with Far Cry 3, where you can kind of come up behind enemies and do takedowns. And one of the cool things with this game actually is when you do a takedown on an enemy, if there's another enemy nearby, you just press the analog stick towards that enemy, and you'll just rush straight to him and do another takedown. Or if there's an enemy in the distance and you take someone down stealthily, you can throw like a shuriken at that enemy. So the stealth is generally well done. Although one of the annoying things with this game is the alarm system, where you have to disactivate alarms, and if you don't and the enemies catch you or see you, they'll activate the alarms and then the reinforcements come, and that is not fun. Like, that's not fun at all. And it was interesting playing this game as far as gameplay goes, because Metal Gear Solid 5 I played quite recently, and this game, the way it does open world stealth, I feel like is nowhere near as good as Metal Gear Solid 5. Like, that game is like now like the benchmark as far as open world stealth gameplay goes. You just don't have as many options here, and it just doesn't play as well as Metal Gear Solid 5 does. But that said, it's still fun. It gets very action packed later. There's a lot of cool set piece moments. I think the first half of the game is weaker gameplay wise. There are some annoying aspects, like I said, the alarms. The enemies, I think, on the normal difficulty do a little too much damage and take too many hits. It's a kind of game where I enjoyed it much more going guns blazing, because that reminds me of more of 80s action movies, not really the stealth. The stealth is fairly fun, but it's annoying when you get caught. It's that kind of thing that I've always hated about stealth games. So actually, I got about like not that far into the game on normal difficulty, and I was starting to get frustrated with how like much damage the enemies were doing. So I actually turned it down to easy, and I had much more fun going through the game like that. So overall, the gameplay, like I really like the gameplay in this game, but there are some things that really bug me about it. First, fire. Now, the way fire in this game works is really annoying. Now, the healing system is a little weird, where you've got your health bar, you can find like med packs and things like that. But if you've lost a lot of health, you can hold Y to kind of heal yourself. And one of the funny things with the game is there's all sorts of different healing animations that you've got, and some of them are pretty funny, but that's the way you'll heal like a large chunk of your health. And that's fine, I like that. But fire, if you touch fire, or if someone shoots you with a flamethrower, or you actually get burned by your own flamethrower, your character will just like flail around like a madman. You have to hold Y to put the fire out. And I cannot tell you how many times this fucking happened to me. It is so irritating. It just takes you out of whatever you're doing, and you have to like hide and hold Y. It's so irritating. I really hate how they did this. And the flamethrower in this game is fucking useless. Like, okay, the flamethrower is always the worst weapon in shooters. And in this game, it's like the worst weapon in the entire game. It's probably the worst flamethrower I've ever seen in a game. But yeah, that really bugged me, more than I expected it to. Another thing with this game, it's repetitive. And this is, I think, a problem with first-person shooters in general. It's one of the reasons why I don't like the genre all that much. They're just repetitive by nature. This game I could only handle like a 2 hours at most before I had to take a break and come back to it another day. You've got a leveling up system in this game too, where you can get new skills and things like that. There's experience, and then there's money. You can like buy weapons and ammo at vending machines. You can upgrade your weapons. That's cool. I like all that. But this game also adheres to the Ubisoft formula, which is like one of my biggest annoyances with their games, where pretty much every single one of their games, at least open world games, you have this giant open world and you have a bunch of shit, just shit all over the place, shit for you to do, like outposts to capture, wildlife to kill. If this game is more scaled back than like say Assassin's Creed, which I appreciated, but it's still got that formula that I think is just so dated and just really repetitive. Batman Arkham Asylum, or not Arkham Knight from this year had the same issue. The Assassin's Creed games have been this way for a long time. Far Cry 3 has that same problem from what I've seen as well. And it's especially annoying after Metal Gear Solid 5, which I think does open world mostly more successfully than Ubisoft games. But other than that, other than those small gripes, I think the game is really fun to play. So yeah, that's gameplay. Visuals, this game is just really colorful. Neon, like this game is neon like crazy. Like there's just bright lights all over the place, very colorful. A lot of purples and blues kind of used with this game. Some really like all the enemies are like shine with like a red glow. This game's got a very striking visual like aesthetic to it. That again harkens back to the '80s. It's almost like almost too powerful. Like the visuals are just so over the top that it can be a bit almost like too. I don't know. It can be a bit much at times, but I do appreciate the overall look of the game. A lot of the enemy designs are interesting. I didn't even mention the blood dragons. Like there's these weird uh, dragon enemies of sorts that you'll find in this game that are really interesting. One of the more creative enemy designs in this game, but I like the look of it. For what I've seen, it actually looks worse than Far Cry 3 for whatever reason. Like the character models seem to be worse. And it just like the textures overall weren't as good. I don't know. It's weird. If you look at this game compared to Far Cry 3, for some reason it doesn't look quite as good. I don't know why. But it's again, this game has a more striking visual aesthetic to it. Like where Far Cry 3 just looks kind of boring. Audio wise. Really cheesy voice acting, but it works with regards to the game. You know, it's '80s cheese basically as far as voice acting and dialogue goes. But the soundtrack is phenomenal. It's like '80s synth kind of soundtrack. Again, very much like the '80s. Like it's the soundtrack is very similar to '80s, cheesy '80s action movies. There's like some of the songs I don't even want to spoil, but yeah, the soundtrack is top notch. My favorite song is actually the song that plays on the main menu. It's I don't know, that's like a really good song. I got to figure out the name of that song, and just all the songs in the soundtrack in general, because the soundtrack really it's one of the strongest parts of the game. It might even be my favorite part of the game overall. The soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal, but. Yeah, I mean that about covers it. There's not too much to say about the game. It's short. There is a lot of optional content, but like with a lot of Ubisoft games, I just didn't really feel inclined to do all of that stuff. But it's a good value for the money. I don't know how much this is to just buy it off like the PlayStation Network or whatever, but I don't think it's all that much. And this game's always on sale, so yeah, I definitely think it's worth it. Even if like me, you're not into first-person shooters, I think it's definitely worth a play. And it's nice to see Ubisoft do something like this. This was a nice surprise. I remember when this came out, because Ubisoft, their games are they're so like I don't know if mainstream is the right word, but they're just dull. Their games, they're like they're the kind of games that they have to appeal to a mass audience, but not Blood Dragon. This is a kind of a niche game, and it really I wasn't expecting anything like this after Far Cry 3. When you think of like a Far Cry 3 expansion, I don't think something like this would come to your mind. But yeah, great stuff. I really enjoyed my time with it. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.